Welcome back to the Solid Verbal Boys and Girls. My name is Ty Hildenbrandt, that fine gentleman over there. You can see him if you're watching on the YouTubes. Dan Rubenstein, looking pristine.
Thank you.
Looking vigorous today, sir. How goes it?
Robust, masculine. Keep going. I'm good. I showered, I shaved, I slept well last night. Life is good. Getting plenty of exercise. It gets nicer in the Midwest, in the Chicagoland area. So, yeah, nothing to complain about beyond you fully tanking a video I made yesterday.
Man.
For our good friends over at TikTok, which I still don't know how any of this works. But you tell me to make videos, and I make videos.
Man, I kind of did you dirty, didn't I?
Hey, sorry for the quick interruption, but it'd be incredible if you considered subscribing to the Solid Verbal YouTube channel right down below. Yeah, my favorite wide receiver going into, this is just a pet situation, my favorite wide receiver going into the 2024 season is T-Mac from Arizona. Tetaroa McMillan is how you pronounce his name?
Correct.
Yes?
Correct.
Tetaroa McMillan. And I confirmed this with you yesterday because you're now in your head after all of these years. And look, we have butchered dozens upon dozens of names in the history of this show. I remember starting out 2011 with Johnny Manziel.
Yeah.
We both did.
We both did. Everybody did. It wasn't just us.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, we struggled. I'm Tennessee's quarterback is Nico to me. you can do whatever you want with the rest of that, but that's too many vowels for somebody that is dumb enough or too dumb to fully wrap his head around. So it's Nico for the time being. We'll see if he is like legit, right? If he turns out to be what we think he's going to be, I'll nail the last name.
It's
I will.
Iamaleava.
See, we'll get there.
I have it written down phonetically. I sent this to you the other day because I was going through. I was watching the Tennessee spring game.
Yeah.
I have it written phonetically, and I'm still butchering it.
Yeah.
This is how in my head I am.
Two volleyball elite standouts, by the way,
True.
Nico and Tetaroa. So I make this video that T-Mac is the best 2024 receiver to me. I don't know if you think it's Luther Burden, if you think it's Ohio State's dude who I butcher his name, Emeka Igbuka.
You got that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's fine. There's a lot of candidates that are worthwhile, but he is my favorite. I made a video about him, and you, before I hit record, told me, Tetairo.
I did so much research on T-Mac before he played a game in college because he's a big deal. Like, people knew who he was.
He was my absolute favorite commitment in Oregon's class before he decommitted when Mario Cristobal left. He was absolute, like, Servite, Orange County, played a bunch of sports, and just for whatever, everybody knew he was like the guy at his high school, and every week he finished with 183 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. So he was my favorite, and so I'm still kind of crushed that he's not in green and yellow.
And I'm telling you, I'm not making this a ton of research into how to say his name.
Uh-huh.
I went with Tetairo each of the last 2 years.
Yeah.
As luck would have it, I got bad intel.
Yeah, you did.
And when you and I referred to the handy-dandy Arizona pronunciation guide in their media guide yesterday, I discovered that indeed it was Tetaroa.
I watched a video before typing out what I thought was the correct way to pronounce his name. I watched Greg Biggins from, I think, 24/7 interview him, and I was like, all right, this is what Greg Biggins says, Tetaroa. And you're like, it's okay. It happens to the best of us. And we will butcher so many names. We will continue to butcher names this season. We're doing our best, and take that for what it's worth, that this is our best.
The Globe tomato thing is still in my head.
Yeah.
I can write things out phonetically, and then I go back and I edit myself in real time, wondering if I was right the first time. I've never gotten over the Globe
And Blue Apron, no longer in business. Related?
I just got a brochure from Blue Apron.
Oh, okay.
So maybe
they filed for bankruptcy or something.
Not a sponsor, still could be if they're interested.
Right.
Hit us up, advertising at solidverbal.com.
Yeah.
On that note, I apologize to you, Dan. I apologize to T-Mac and to the Verballerhood as a whole. That was my bad. It's something I need to figure out in my own time.
That's okay.
On today's episode, we put out a call across social media, of course, out on Patreon at verballers.com for your questions. It has turned to the month of May, Dan Rubenstein.
Yeah.
This is our aforementioned mailbag episode of the month of May, the mailbag, if you will. Got questions from around the corners of the internet. We've got a list in front of us here. We are going to dive in momentarily. Don't forget, if you are just finding this podcast, if you enjoyed the T-Mac discussion and or mispronunciation at the top of the episode, please hit follow or subscribe. That helps us a great deal, Dan.
Yeah.
Shall we dive in?
Let's do it.
About once a month here in the offseason, Dan, we pay homage to the verballers around the corners of the internet who choose to send in questions to help move this show forward. We both have a list in front of us, got about 10 questions or so that we picked out. Some are from you, some are from me, some are from Instagram and Twitter and Threads, Patreon, you name it. We source these from every corner out there. Where would you like to start?
Let's start with the good Reverend atop this list.
Reverend DJ
Esquire.
Yeah. Esquire. Reverend DJ Esquire. Thank you.
Sure.
Better to root for a perennial national title contender or a team that only seldomly reaches that level?
So better is relative.
Right. Does a 12-team playoff change that calculus at all? This is an interesting question.
Okay. I don't think it's that fun, and both of us, at the best of our team's ceilings, root for national championship contenders. And so when you root for a national championship contender, in my experience, Oregon has appeared in 2 national championships in the last dozen or so years, 14 years now, has played in a number of huge bowl games, and has won a lot of games. Same for Notre Dame. Notre Dame has played for at least 1 national championship in that time and played in a number of huge bowl games, but routinely wins 10, 11 games, is in that playoff conversation. I think a lot of it is fun, but losses take on a crazy meaning. And if you set your sights on a national championship in August, like if you're a Georgia fan right now, if
I
you're
was going to call out
fan,
Georgia
whatever,
or Ohio State. Yeah.
The last few years, I'm sure, have been terrific. But last year, merely going 12-0 and then losing in the SEC championship game, you can't really celebrate that season, can you? And the way it ended with the Orange Bowl and Florida State not having a number of players, not having Jordan Travis and blowing out Florida State, you're just like, I'm not a Georgia fan, so I can't speak to specifics. But from afar, it seems like, wow, what a weirdly empty 12-0 year, right?
Well, here's the question.
Yeah.
Would you rather be an Ohio State fan or a TCU fan? I think those are 2 good recent examples. Well, Ohio State's a national title contender every year. They haven't won it since, 2014, whatever it's been.
Yeah.
But for sure, a national championship contender every year. Georgia, national championship contender every year. Alabama, national championship contender every year. Versus a TCU who, to the question here, every once in a great while maybe reaches that level, did reach that level a couple years ago when they played for the national championship.
Has played in big bowl games, yeah.
So from afar, which side of that coin would you rather be on? My hunch is, among the TCU fans that listen to this show, that came to our live show when we were out in L.A. Before that title game.
and watched Georgia beat them by 60 or whatever, yeah.
And watched whatever that final car crash ended up being. My hunch was they were definitively happy to be there. There was this sense of playing with house money.
Yeah, of course.
They were just happy to be there, still kind of caught up in the surprise of being there at all. I would much rather be a fan of a perennial contender. And this is not to say I'm a front runner or anything like that, but being in the throes of that conversation as you get to the latter part of November, even the latter part of October every year, there is a thrill that comes with that I think you want more than you don't want. So for me, I think it's pretty obvious. Now, does the 12-team playoff change that calculus at all?
We'll see. I don't know. We haven't had it yet.
We haven't had it yet, but it does lower the bar a little bit to entry. Because I think you're going to have some new teams that weasel their way into that 12-team playoff. you will, of course, have a lot of the same blue bloods that we're accustomed to, like Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia. Frankly, there are some teams that I think you and I are just writing into the playoff in pencil, but we're writing them in 2024. These teams are going to be there, barring any kind of collapse. But some of the other at-large schools, or even the group of 5 schools that find their way into that tournament, I do think it changes the calculus a little bit. I think getting into the tournament, just by simple definition of what the tournament is, what the playoff is, that means you're a national championship contender. You are actually playing for the championship. So I think being a playoff contender may be the new norm by which we are addressing this question.
Okay, so here, let me twist the spirit of this question a little bit. Which team currently, based solely on 2023, to you has the most appeal as a team to root for in terms of experience? And by that, if I can define it, it'll be right. It's a competent team.
Yep.
From a coaching standpoint, from an execution standpoint. There's enough talent to make you believe. There's effort behind the scenes to recruit, and like everything's pointing in the same direction. There's an alignment behind the scenes, at least it seems. And you are going to lose, but when you do lose, you're just like, I get it. We just lost to so-and-so, and that's a really tough team to beat. Who is that team that you think gives you a good amount of perspective and joy without expecting the world and not only giving you like a surprise upset win as a source of joy?
A solid team that could rise to these heights, but if they don't, you understand why.
Yeah.
Missouri.
It's obvious, so obviously Missouri. I was thinking it as I said it, and I was wondering if you were going to get there. Where's simpatico with this?
I have our document in front of us, in front of me. I don't have anything else in front of me. As you got like two sentences into that, and I'm like, the answer is Missouri. The answer is Missouri. They're incredibly likable. Brady Cook is back at quarterback. Luther Burden is going to be fun as hell to watch.
And Cody Schrader was super fun last year, yeah.
Cody Schrader was super fun last year. There's certainly been an effort afoot behind the scenes to build that program up. They take the football program, very, very seriously. The answer is Mizzou. There are others. We could throw others out, I'm sure, but Mizzou, I think, is the most obvious.
I would say, interestingly enough, Mizzou's old rival fits that in Kansas. Kansas last year. Okay, the Kansas experience last year was turning Illinois over a bunch, scoring 40 points a bunch, losing to a team that ended up in the Big 12 championship game in Oklahoma State in a bit of a back and forth, losing to Texas big, but like in retrospect, that's fine. It was at Texas, beating Oklahoma in some weird, wet, moist environs, losing a weird, dumb one to Texas Tech and Kansas State with your third string quarterback and being competitive in those games, beating up on Cincinnati to close the year, winning a bowl game they should have won with their backup quarterback throwing for nearly 500 yards. Coming off of most of the recent modern Kansas era, having a season like that, ending in a bowl win, ending with 9 wins, including that bowl win, I think it was fair to have expectations of competence and talent going into the season. And, having a quarterback injury is pretty brutal to both Jalen Daniels and Jason Bean. But all things considered, like, that's a pretty joyous season, I would say.
I would agree with that.
Anybody else that you think fits that, like, sweet spot in 2023? It's not Penn State.
It's not Penn State. Is there a case to be made for a Utah?
Utah, I don't think there was a lot of joy in watching Utah football because of the injuries last year.
You're right
and
about
like
that.
The Nate Johnson, Bryson Barnes, you had some highs, you had some lows, but you just, when you're watching a team full of third strings and like you're so beat up that you're having, a safety play running back, it's fun. The Sione Vake experience is fun, and I'm sure it was fun as a Utah fan watching this like super beleaguered squad of second and third stringers starting every week win games and look kind of exciting doing so. You got to be disappointed with what could have been with a healthy Cam Rising, with healthy guys on both sides of the ball.
There's also a case to be made for new look Texas A&M
for this year.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, a lot of these teams with new coaches. Yeah.
I don't know if
reason to be excited, but yeah.
Don't know if you saw our friend Tim Murray posted some of the early lines for week 1 this coming season. Texas A&M opens with Notre Dame at home. They're a 2-point favorite. So Vegas is obviously looking at what they've got returning, despite the fact that a lot walked out. They still have a lot of talent in College Station, and Vegas at first blush here favors A&M in that game against Notre Dame. I think they'll be formidable. I don't know how they will hold up against a full SEC schedule, but in terms of a cuspy team that has a lot to be excited about, if only because of a new coach, obviously has talent in place, but plays a tough schedule that it's understandable if they drop 2 or 3 games, and still may have something of a stake in the game when it comes to getting into the playoff. A&M kind of fits that mold as well.
Yeah, I'd throw Arizona's 2023 in that sweet spot. Like, I think Arizona fans probably had, even with a winnable game against Washington, USC, and they lost that awful, I think it was a Jaden DeLora game at Mississippi State, where I think he threw like 4 picks in the first quarter and a half.
Yeah,
that's wrong, but it's what it felt like. Or maybe it's right. So the lows were not especially fun, but I think they finished the season winning 6 or 7 in a row, beating Oklahoma. And look, if you're an Arizona fan heading into last year, competence and talent had been in sort of short supply. They flashed it in 2022 a little bit, and 2023 was that culmination. And so, yeah, I would argue, the 37 Arizona diehard fans that there are had as good and as fun a 2023 as you could have had.
Let's go to Billy out on X. With the new conferences, which regular season game is going to feel the weirdest?
Oh, this is easy for me.
My vote, he says, is USC at Michigan in September.
That doesn't seem that weird to me. They played in the Rose Bowl.
It's 2 blue bloods, right?
Yeah.
2 blue blood programs that have played each other before in big games. So it may be weird to play that game at Michigan, but I think the fact that they're in the same conference is weirder than the fact that they're playing.
Yeah.
I look at a game like UCLA at Rutgers.
Mm-hmm.
Not only is it the far extreme ends of the conference, but these are not 2 teams I am accustomed to seeing play each other. It's even weirder given the fact that UCLA is in a bit of a transition, new coach, that Rutgers is kind of building this weird like ground assault under Greg Schiano, which he's done before.
Right.
And I'm interested to see what the point spread is in that game, because the game's at Rutgers. I don't know what UCLA's travel looks like before, during, and after that stretch of its season, but somebody is probably going to make a case that Rutgers could be a little bit more formidable in that matchup.
Yeah. Okay, when did this is perfect. Okay, interleague play in Major League Baseball started in 1997. You were in your mid-30s. It was a different time. But do you remember, I don't know if this was the situation for you. You were a Yankees fan. Do you remember, like, wait, the Yankees are playing the Braves in June? I remember, like, the Dodgers are playing the Tigers? How is this allowed?
I
was 14 years old.
The biggest thing in my universe.
Yes, of course.
For an entire summer.
Yeah.
An entire summer. I want to say the Phillies played the Yankees, and a good friend of mine had tickets that were right behind the Phillies dugout.
Blowing up your pager, trying to get you to come with him?
Blowing up my...
your Nextel, yeah.
My Motorola Razr.
Uh-huh.
It was earth-shattering to me that these teams in different leagues would play each other.
Yeah. It was very much odd. Like, I felt like we had green skies. Like, how is this at all allowed? How is this normal? Because the one like sacred moment was, well, you have 2 sacred moments in baseball. You have the All-Star game. They're like, okay, of course, we're doing American National and then the World Series. And now we're just going to throw this all away. And when I saw Stanford going to Clemson in late September, I looked at the schedule like, what are we doing, guys? What are we doing? With conference title implications. Stanford at Clemson, September 27th, 28th, somewhere in there. And there is something about when you look at USC or UCLA and Michigan, Ohio State. Like Ohio State had a home and home with USC not too long ago and played during the season. Oregon and Ohio State had a home and home not too long ago. The Oregon version got canceled because of COVID. And like we've seen these like inter blue blood matchups in the non-conference part. So like having USC-Michigan, like, okay, that feels fine. That feels like a game I really want to watch because it's two interesting teams. But you're right. Like UCLA, Rutgers, because Rutgers doesn't still fully feel like a Big Ten school, Rutgers and Maryland.
Right.
I've long maintained that Maryland is simply on loan from the ACC.
Right.
And it's going to come full circle. You watch.
It will. But like Oregon's got a home game against Maryland this year.
Yeah, that's pretty weird.
Also kind of weird, right?
Oregon, Illinois, I think is happening this season. Yeah, there is something about, and I don't think about the Big Ten as much because we've just been hit over the head with Big Ten stuff so much that the ACC are like, SMU, Wake Forest. This is what we're doing now. There is like the Texas-Oklahoma thing as well, where like they've all played in bowl games and had, Oklahoma had Tennessee, I want to say, with Baker Mayfield. Like we've seen some of these matchups where it doesn't feel like a foreign language. But yeah, the new look ACC and some of the newer Big Ten teams in the West Coast, especially UCLA, because UCLA is in this like weird place where they're not even the biggest school in their town. They play in a stadium that fills up to maybe a third full, and then they're going to be hosting Indiana. Right? We were just like, what's happening here, everybody?
Right.
That to me feels odd because when I picture the Rose Bowl and like Pac-12 games, I think about, we did a whole show with this last summer, but you're just like, okay, here's Oregon State coming into the Rose Bowl. Here's Washington, is there Arizona, whatever. And like Utah and Colorado felt like they fit to different extents, but yeah, just like, all right, Indiana's packing up and heading to Pasadena in early October or whenever. That to me is different, and that'll take some getting used to. But yeah, USC-Michigan, not as much. Definitely Stanford Clemson, where you're just like, it's the weirdest potluck we've ever hosted.
Ranch Hand Dan from Patreon.
Yeah.
Multiple teams such as Virginia Tech, Oklahoma State, Northwestern, Georgia Tech, and many others either had much more successful seasons in 2023 than expected or had a strong finish to the season. Which 2023 overachievers are set to build on their success in 2024? And which ones spent the offseason getting fat on pretzels and Amish chicken?
Good reference. That's what you were over there doing.
Pretzels and Amish chicken.
Yeah. So build on this. So quarterback continuity at Virginia Tech. Just continuity in general at Northwestern after having an interim coach last year, hiring a new offensive coordinator. Like, it seems like there's forward momentum for Northwestern as they play at a local park this year. They're playing on a practice field on the water in Evanston.
This is the best story in college football.
I'm very excited for this.
The Northwestern temporary stadium situation is the best story in college football, or the most interesting story in college football. Never mind all the Dion drama. Maybe we can talk about that, and the portal and how it's changing the way we view college football, and the playoff and the conference realignment. We have the video game. We have all these changes that are converging at once. I would contend that Northwestern's portable stadium maybe is my favorite story going into this year. You just never hear
stadium.
You never hear of it to this extent. You've always seen situations where they're renovating a stadium and there's kind of like a temporary seating within that stadium, or they have to move
like
it
Vanderbilt
elsewhere.
had all the construction in the end zone. Yeah.
Or they're moving to another stadium that is set up for football or something like football.
Yeah.
But never where they're bringing in like portable bleachers and making a high school field along the water.
Northwestern really missed the mark. They go undefeated, 2 years ago in Ireland? Whole season
Nebraska.
In Ireland.
Yeah.
The whole season, Northwestern undefeated abroad. Whole season in Dublin. That'd be great. And you just like, all of a sudden, there's just like a rabid Northwestern fan base.
Northwestern plays all of its home games at Aviva Stadium.
Yeah. And then you get like Northern Ireland suddenly becoming Illinois fans just because of, that'd be fun. So, all I can add to this is, yes, it's a great story. Yes, that seems like there's forward momentum with Northwestern Georgia Tech, I feel like there's good momentum. I would, of these four schools, I'd say Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech, and probably lean on Virginia Tech a little more because of home field advantage and defensive linemen coming back, quarterback coming back. That to me just shines a little bit brighter. If there's any other teams, by all means, let me know. Teams who took a nice step forward. I can tell you this about the Northwestern Stadium situation. So Ryan Field is on a thoroughfare in Evanston called Central Street.
Correct.
And they have knocked down the entirety of Ryan Field, except for the middle part of the western side, which houses the press box. Okay? So I don't know how wide this area is, but it's like probably 10 yards of field worth is the only thing standing. The rest of Ryan Field is pure rubble. I drove by it the other day, and it was an especially foggy day, and it felt like I was driving in Angola and seeing like one of those ghost ships off the coast that has been long abandoned, but probably overtaken by squatters who are very violent. That's what Ryan Field looked like to me driving by. It looked scary as hell. It looked so weird. Cables dangling everywhere. Yeah. It's like, oh, this has been taken over by a group of separatists that are not that friendly. That's what Ryan Field currently looks like. Can't wait to see it. My 5-year-old and 3-year-old cannot wait to watch construction, but it is going to be a very odd situation at Northwestern this year. I can't wait.
I'm pretty high on West Virginia.
I think that's right. And they won games without the starting quarterback and with like a bunch of weird situations. Yeah.
I think there's enough back. I think Garrett Green is underrated. And I hope that what we saw out of the Mountaineers last season is an interesting turning point for Neil Brown. Got the extension, was on the hot seat going into the year. I did everything I could to talk down West Virginia in the preseason. They went out and they had a good season. And now they've got enough back. I think they're going to be primed and ready to go here. It's too early to go through and try to figure out what their final tally will look like. But I do think they're in a better spot than they were a year ago, and they're in prime position to build off of what they finished out with last season. So they're the one that initially comes to mind. And so I agree with you on the Virginia Tech front. Obviously, we've been talking about Virginia Tech and Virginia Tech's schedule now for 3 months. We're all in on Kyron Drones at Virginia Tech and what their slate looks like this coming season. This isn't news to us at all. So I'm with you on that front. Who else did he posit here? He says
Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, Oklahoma State, Northwestern. You mentioned West Virginia. I've got another school, but continue.
Yeah, I mean, Oklahoma State's interesting. Enough back. I'm still not super high on Oklahoma State, but I probably need to reform my thinking a little bit around the Pokes just because I've been dead wrong the last 2 years. Northwestern's interesting, not just because of the stadium, but because of the coach and the offensive coordinator. And obviously we love Haynes King at Georgia Tech, even though it's a tough schedule. So I think these are all decent answers. Who else would you throw out?
Okay, so I have an 8-4 team last year who won their final 5 games that are in a power conference. Okay, so Arizona wins their final 7. Michigan wins their final 15. I don't know if there was any school that won their final 6, but there is one who won their final 5 in a power conference, finishing 8-4. So starting out, if my math is correct, 3-4 and finishing 8-4. If you remove previous context, which is very important in this situation, the Clemson Tigers fit this.
Yeah. Okay.
So are you a believer in the way that Ranch Hand Dan has posited this question? Build on their success, or are Dabo and his fellas going to be eating pretzels and Amish chicken? Quarterback and defensive line.
Quarterback, defensive line. I said it the other day when we did a show talking about Clemson. I'm not ready to throw in the towel on Clemson this season. I mean, obviously there's still plenty of talent on hand. And
of course,
despite the fact that the schedule starts off with Georgia, neutral siter in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, the rest of the schedule is very workable.
It's great.
The rest of the schedule is incredibly workable.
Great year to get Florida State on the road.
Yeah.
Losing what they lost, NFL-wise.
So I think you got to be a Clemson believer with respect to the playoff. This is actually a great segue into our next question that we got from Steven out on Instagram. He says, where's the cutoff of teams who can or look like they could make the 12-team playoff field? I don't think Clemson is in danger of missing the playoff. I think Clemson right now based on that schedule alone and the talent they have on hand. I would also write Clemson in pencil into the 12-team field. But this is that question.
Well, you can approach this in two different ways, too.
Yeah, I was going to say,
you could say
this is that question that pops up that, it's asking about the cuspy teams going into this new setup.
So the interpretation can either be in 2024, which team do you think is just like right there on the brink? And if you seem worse May 1st, if you seem worse on May 1st, then it's not looking great. If you seem a little bit better or a lot better, then it's looking pretty good. Or you can say which programs should be considered to be 12-team-ish playoff programs given what they're putting into in terms of coaching salaries and coaching hires and recruiting budget and NIL and recent results, quarterback recruit. Like, there's a number of factors. So I don't know which way you want to answer this question, the 2024 teams or the playoff serious-ish programs.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a longer list of playoff serious-ish teams that we could discuss. I tend to look at a question like that in terms of who do I think is team number 13, team number 14, team number 15.
I don't.
This coming season. That's how I look at this question.
I think you can make cases in May for 40 teams.
Sure.
I can't make a case for number 37 being of top 12 quality, but the number 37 team is probably 6 points away in some instances. So that, it's there's context needed, but yes, whoever the, 8-4 team is from last year certainly was not terribly far away. That, whatever 8-4 team you want to choose, was not terribly far away from being number 12.
No, I think that all computes. If I am looking at and this is the preseason SP Plus from our friend Bill Connolly.
Yeah.
Take that for whatever it's worth. Bill will be the first to tell you that it changes a million times through the first 3 weeks of the season. This is not scripture by any stretch of the imagination. But if I am looking at this list and if I am trying to identify which teams I think are cuspy, which I think are right on the border of that 12-team field, I focus in on Michigan right away.
Okay.
I think Michigan's got a lot of talent, but what does Michigan look like with so much walking out the door, not the least of which is Jim Harbaugh? I think Michigan is on the cusp. I look at a team like Kansas State, another school that you and I think perpetually are high on, and have been waiting for them to maybe put it all together or do so in a more consistent fashion. They're always there. They're always formidable. They're well coached. Right on that border for me.
Yeah.
I throw Oklahoma State in there as well.
Sure.
I really don't know what to expect out of Oklahoma State this year. I feel like I've said that for each of the last 4 years running. I am certainly not a fan of how they are approaching things in the high school recruiting game, but they've been able to get enough through the portal. They've been able to get enough out there in their two deep that obviously last season they had a pretty good year. They also strike me as a team with a lot coming back that is right on that border of being inside the 12. Other schools that jump out to you that I have not mentioned?
Yeah, I think Louisville and NC State are in that zone. Louisville's had a bunch of turnover, both coming in and coming out. NC State is sort of the model of consistency and winning 8.2 games a year. That if things break correctly for NC State in any given season, there's a decent argument to be made that they're playoff worthy. And same for Louisville. We've seen it over the years. They've played in big bowl games. The best of Louisville can be quite impressive. Having Lamar Jackson, Teddy Bridgewater taking Louisville. I mean, this is a different ACC and a different environment, but those are teams that I think are actively playing and building and hiring like they have the expectation to be in the mix. And they're also not in a conference that's terribly stacked at the top like the new look SEC and Big Ten are.
Sure.
So the margin for error is a little bit bigger for programs like Louisville and NC State. On the West Coast, I think UCLA is interesting because they're another one of those teams that, look, at their best, they seem to be 8.5 wins. And they had a great coach in Chip Kelly, sort of. He did a lot of things really well. He maximized what they had, but he was also responsible for not building a more impressive roster. So I think UCLA fits that, like, they're right in that purgatory area between like a playoff program in a 12-team year at their absolute height and not being serious enough to do it consistently. So they're right in that weird zone. Who else?
Can we take a knee for a second? We're going to move on
Please.
to the next question after this.
Okay.
We have talked a great deal about Virginia Tech's schedule and how much we like it.
Yeah.
Again, we've been doing that since January. Have you seen NC State's schedule?
No, let me pull it up.
Pull this up. I'm going to read it off for our viewers and listeners.
Oh my God, I pulled up their basketball schedule and I was like, oh my God, they play so many games.
Western Carolina.
Sure.
Neutral site game against Tennessee. That'll be tough.
Where are they playing it?
Charlotte.
Oh, okay.
Maybe not
That's
as
fine.
tough. Louisiana Tech. On the road, week, 3 or 4 against Clemson. That'll obviously be a difficult game. But after that, Northern Illinois, Wake Forest, Syracuse, Cal on the road. Bye week. Stanford at home, Duke at home, another bye week, close out the year, 2 games on the road at Georgia Tech and North Carolina.
Yeah.
If NC State is halfway decent, that's 9 wins. That's 8 wins at a minimum.
You can say that if their schedule's brutal, though, right? If they're halfway decent, NC State's going to go 8-4, 9-3. Yeah. If you were like, okay, here's NC State's schedule this year.
They'd go 10-2 against this.
I don't know. Dave Doran might be allergic.
Okay. All right. Let's move on. Let's get to our...
That's a great... But here's the thing with the ACC, and we fall into this trap, I think, every summer. Every July 9th, we fall into this trap. We look at an ACC team schedule, and we see Syracuse, Wake, and Boston College. We're like, this is pretty good. This is a pretty good schedule. It doesn't mean anything because, look, who did Pitt beat last year? They beat very few teams. Did they beat North Carolina? Is that who they ended up beating last? Like, there's just going to be a random week where you're penciling in a win because this awful team is on the schedule and like, well, they beat you. That's the ACC. And so I don't know that calling any ACC team or any ACC schedule pretty light, even if it looks it in spring and summer.
Martin out on Instagram, if you could pull a single lever to make college football more enjoyable for the most fans, what would the lever do? Same question, but for players. I'm envisioning the Chuck Norris lever that Conan used to have.
Yes, of course.
Where he'd pull the lever and then the Walker Texas Ranger clip would play.
Mm-hmm. Like a weird Haley Joel Osment AIDS.
Yeah.
Yeah. Continue.
What does the lever do, Dan? What would the lever do? To Martin's question.
So the most enjoyable, like what if you were running for commissioner, essentially, what is the platform, the singular item that you would run on that would have the most people say, oh, okay, yeah, I can get on board with that.
Yeah. Do you have a thing?
De-alignment, I think, would be one of them.
Okay.
If there are no bad answers, there's always bad answers with me. De-alignment would be up there. So you're talking about fans are largely watching on TV, though many do obviously attend in person. In person, I guess honestly, it would be for in person and TV fans. It'd be like one commercial per break.
Yeah,
one commercial. I think
the commercials are killer. They are killer.
I think if you polled people on de-alignment or scaling back the portal, there are popular things you could do. Scaling back the portal or regulating the portal with the calendar and contracts, whatever you're going to do. Commercial breaks, because football is a really fun sport to watch in person that's made less fun by downtime.
No.
So if you charged a crazy premium to be the one sponsor, like AutoZone is just throwing hundreds of millions of dollars at the sport for people to get in the zone, I think that's pretty good.
Limiting commercials would be a pretty big one. That would be a big deal. That is one of the most frequent complaints. And
because I don't think people care about a game being long if there's a lot of football, right? If you're watching, an air raid team that's throwing the ball 61 times and there are incomplete passes and that does stop the clock, it's still football. You're still having a good time sitting on a couch, hopefully with people you like, watching football. It's the fact that it's 4 hours long because you're getting those extended breaks and you're going, touchdown commercial, extra point commercial, kickoff commercial. I might be making that up, but it feels like it sometimes.
Well, and since you kind of stole the commercial answer,
yeah,
I do think that, again, the question here is more enjoyable for the most fans.
Yeah.
Which to me screams the TV audience. What can we do to improve the experience for the TV audience? The thing that I hate, and maybe it's just because we do this, I hate when you've got games stacked on top of games. You've got like 10 games in a window, all of which you want to watch, and you can only watch 2 or 4 or whatever you've got capacity for on your TV.
Yeah.
So if I could pull a lever that would make that scheduling on a week-to-week basis a little bit more flexible so that we can space these games out. You can still plan your day accordingly. You may have games in the early block that you're not interested in watching, but just don't give me a setup where I've got a dozen games at night, all of which are nationally significant, all of which I want to watch.
Yeah.
Because then that sucks. Because then you're trying to watch 6 games on your TV at home, and in reality, you're not watching any of them. You're just moving pictures, right? So give me a little bit better spacing on the schedule, and I think that would go a long way for the home viewer. Now, he also says, same question, but for the players.
Yeah. So I have an answer that is a really good answer for the first part as well, and the absolute worst answer for the second part. You ready?
Okay.
Here's the ultimate.
Commercials?
No, so many commercials. 4-game schedule, extra commercials.
Right.
Now, my alternate answer, and this is just a very silly thought experiment, college football draft.
Oh.
So basically, you treat college football like some countries treat compulsory military service. They're like, hey, buddy, sorry, you want to play college football? Better learn about Boston winters. I know you're from Florida, but you're off to Chestnut Hill. You're off to Evanston. You're off to Pullman. A college football draft. You still have 247. You still have evaluations. You play high school wherever you want. And it actually, the evaluation element of this from a college perspective, that like you can get great value if you really believe in somebody who's a 2-star, a 3-star somewhere. If you want parity, if you are sick of Georgia and Texas and Ohio State and Michigan and Oregon and Texas A&M, whatever, scooping up all these monster classes, Alabama, college football draft.
Oh, man.
So you're going to lose a lot of people. You're going to lose a lot of fans of those schools. But suddenly, you even things out a little bit.
That'd be like
compulsory college
like
football.
78 rounds. Wow. Okay.
It would be a long. I mean, you still what? You regulate the number of picks, so it's 25 or something like that. And you figure out a way to use, what is it called when the NFL, like you lose your coach and you get an extra pick if you're not, you get like a 4th round pick.
Right. The compensatory selection.
Yeah. Compensatory. So you figure out that with transfers, maybe you get rewarded with an extra 44th round pick if your team meets a certain GPA threshold. Yeah. That would be the worst for the players. What would be the best thing for the players? Aside from money, because that's obvious and worthwhile. What would be the best thing to make players' lives better?
Well, based on recent reporting, probably not going to Colorado. I don't know if we can pull that lever here. Beyond that,
if you could pull a lever to make players' lives better.
Wow. I don't know.
Well, their schedules are pretty crazy. And so I think you could figure out maybe alternate school schedules, and it's just a lot of it's just tutors.
Well, here we go. Okay, hold on. On that note, fix the damn calendar.
Okay.
Fix the damn calendar, because
it's impossible, but yes.
It's impossible, but find a way to do it. Again, This is a lever. We've got a lever. We can fix the calendar. I don't know how we're fixing it, but fix the calendar so that you're not forcing kids into a situation where they got to transfer when their teams still are playing.
Mm-hmm.
Like Malik Murphy last year. Right. On the topic of the draft, Zach,
I would force time off and like going home for players, right? That like, look, a lot of players are on campus in the summer, whether it's for schoolwork, whether it's for workouts. A lot are obviously there for spring, and they take spring break now. It seems during spring practice, a lot of teams will take a week off or something like that. But you still have players playing Thanksgiving, Christmas, holidays, New Year's, everything like that. Like, figure out a way to just send everybody home to just chill the F out.
Zach says, now that the NFL draft is over, which players are you most excited to watch on their new teams?
Oh, in the NFL?
Yeah, as college football gurus. Well, Zach, I don't know about that. Which picks surprised you most? So the Michael Penix one. I mean, you were on your way home from tennis and called me to figure out what the hell was going on with the Michael Penix pick. A week removed, I'm still not sure we know exactly. I've seen the rationale for taking Penix. I am not an NFL GM nor an NFL analyst. The rationale was a little shallow to me. Didn't seem like it made a whole lot of sense. So that one was certainly surprising. How do you feel about Bo Nix going 12 to the Broncos?
I have no idea. I have no idea. Like, I know the Broncos are paying Russell Wilson $1.3 billion to not play for the Denver Broncos, right? There's some like crazy number that he is now going to be speaking at Davos. He is he's the world's 14th richest man. But no, I have no idea. I know Sean Payton is like a quarterback guy, that he had a lot of successful offenses with Drew Brees in New Orleans. I have no idea what's around Bo Nix. I have no idea who's blocking up front for Bo Nix.
Audric Estime, your boy, is
Audric Estime, and Troy Franklin was drafted along with Bo Nix, so you have the Oregon connection.
So if I'm going to give you just a handful of guys that I'm interested in.
Okay.
I love Ainias Smith.
Okay.
Love Ainias Smith.
Where's he playing?
He got drafted by the Eagles.
Oh, okay.
Like a 5th round pick, I want to say, but somebody who you and I talked a great deal about when he was in college, and just feels like he's one of those guys who's gonna get it. He's playing on a good team. That much will be somewhat exciting. To that point, Will Shipley, my other guy, is also now an Eagle. Behind Saquon, behind Kenny Gainwell. So I don't know how much time he's going to get, but I do think pretty highly of Will Shipley, and I think if given a chance, that could be kind of fun to watch. So I'm in on those guys. I've been in on those guys. I'm also really, really, really interested to see if Malik Nabors pans out. I know that's probably a popular guess because he was the 6th overall pick, but I'm a Giants fan, at least sometimes a Giants fan. And given the fact that he goes to what was a really bad offense last year, presumably with a bad quarterback this year, he was talked about in many circles as the top wideout in this year NFL draft, above Marvin Harrison Jr., above Rome Odunze. I like Malik Nabors. I don't know if I like him that much. And I certainly don't know if I like him that much in a Giants uniform.
Okay.
So I'm hopeful that maybe he can get to those heights. And I am certainly excited to the question here from Zach. I'm very excited to see Malik Nabors play. Whether or not he can get to some of those pre-draft projections, therein lies the intrigue, man. I just don't know about that. Not with Daniel Jones thrown to him. But otherwise, excited to see what he can do for the Big Blue.
I like the 49ers. I follow the 49ers more than I do any other team, but I don't really watch them unless they're playing at night, Sunday night or Monday night. Ricky Pearsall is really interesting with them just because he was able to perform in a pretty disappointing Florida offense. And so what could he do with Kyle Shanahan, figuring out ways to get him the ball creatively? That seems really fun. You like Shane Gillis, the comedian? I like him a lot. I think he's really funny. He has a bit in one of his stand-up specials about white cornerbacks being like only available to be seen at the San Diego Zoo. And then the Eagles, his team, drafts Cooper DeJean. He might play safety. He might play nickel. I don't know where he's going to play on this team. He'll probably play special teams, but Cooper DeJean in the NFL, just Swiss Army knife. Very excited to see what he does for I assume the Eagles are supposed to be good.
They should be good. Yeah. Yeah, they should be. Really
they added Saquon, right? Saquon Barkley is an Eagle. So that's one of them for me. Jackson Powers Johnson, just because I really liked watching him at Oregon, and he is the subject of our biggest video ever on TikTok.
Your TikTok did
wildly enough.
Yeah.
So he I think he's a Raider now. There was one other. I'm looking at the list right now to remind myself that I was trying to figure out how they would do, and I can't. Oh, the easiest one of all is Caleb Williams, because I live where I live. And so everybody's been asking me about Caleb Williams, like I'm some sort of NFL draft scout ahead of the draft. And now that he is going to be surrounded by what appears to be like the best situation for an incoming rookie quarterback in terms of the receivers, Rome Odunze And then it was Keenan Allen and DJ Moore are going to be his best receivers. And they, I think, loaded up on offensive line, the inside of the line. I can't wait to see how he does. Like, he has an opportunity to be like, I don't want to say Michael Jordan, but if he is what people hope he is, which is real difficult to do in Chicago.
I mean, they're still the Bears,
recent history of the Bears,
they're
right?
Still the Bears. That's the problem.
But like the best of the Bears players recently, Khalil Mack, whatever, like that's just never been a quarterback. Like, I don't get the sense that people are like, remember Jay Cutler? Like, I don't have those conversations here. I don't know. So he has an opportunity to be incredibly special for the Bears. So I will be paying attention to the Bears much more than I have since moving here. Mike Sanderstill, I'm very curious about.
Yeah.
With Washington. I'm trying to think if there was anybody else, first round, second round. I really like Terrion Arnold, and it seems like Detroit is a couple pieces away. They ended up in the NFC Championship game last year.
Yep.
Terrion Arnold, Alabama.
Okay.
So those are my answers.
All right, a few more. Lars?
Yes.
What up, Lars?
Lars.
What would be the weirdest scandal for a coach to be caught up in?
Okay.
But clearly not a fireable offense. So
okay,
Lars wants us to be saucy, but not too saucy.
So this
which I appreciate.
Wouldn't run afoul of like a morality clause in a contract.
Correct. So this is like, was it Dennis Francione with the newsletter? That type of thing. Like, it's things that straddle the line of maybe being not desirable, but not fireable.
Right. Okay. So it would definitely have to be universally looked at as like, this is a little weird. This is a little weird and out in public. And this is what I'm always going to be thinking about when I look at this coach on the sideline.
Right.
Like there are countless examples of coaches in a ton of different sports just being oddballs out front. Like I think about Mark Jackson preaching on a sidewalk, yelling. We were like, oh, cool, constitutional right, blah, blah, blah. But like, I don't know. That's a little bit different. What would be that scandal? Where is it some sort of like open marriage situation that's just like out there for everybody to see in this small college town? Which again, everybody has, different perspective
to each his own,
different views. Right, of course. Would it be like what was the character's name from Office Space? Peter, I forget. Peter whatever. Ron Livingston's character.
Gibbons?
Peter Gibbons. Thank you. Look at you. Just nailing it. Where a coach just cracks. Where a coach just shows up for his presser, kicks his feet up on the table, is chugging Gatorade, is like, this guy rules, this guy sucks. Like, he's just like so candid and just fully loses the ability to coach speak, right? That right. It's that player or that coach kind of mailing it in socially, but winning. You're like, well, we can't fire him. He's just being oddly casual. What is that, is it?
I think I have one.
Okay.
And it is a story as old as time.
Kalen DeBoer is a furry?
Not furry.
Okay.
I don't know what Alabama's stance is on that. I'll get back to you. I'll look up.
It's legal.
Law. I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
What if it gets out, and it has gotten out for other prominent people?
Mm-hmm.
But what if it gets out, let's say, via a college restaurant, via, let's say, some way on social media that catches fire?
You're not going Rick Pitino with this when talking about a restaurant.
Not going Rick Pitino with this, thankfully.
Because that's morality clause to me.
That'd be morality clause. What if it gets out that a coach is an extraordinarily bad tipper and bad patron at a restaurant?
Like obnoxious towards the server?
Obnoxious towards the server, refuses to tip.
That's not a weird scandal. That just means he's a jerk.
It means he's a jerk, but that's the kind of thing, to your point, you see that, and then every time you look at the coach, that's what you think of.
Yeah.
Guy's a jerk. Guy doesn't tip. Guy's a bad patron.
Mm-hmm.
You can't wash that off, Dan.
Right. It's not a scandal, though. That's not an event. What is the event?
I'm trying
to
think
What is the
of,
lifestyle?
I'm trying to think of very, very meaningless yet meaningful scenarios. Like, is a coach stiffing somebody on Facebook Marketplace? Is a coach, like, things where coaches interact with everyday people that get caught on camera, that get caught on social media, and they catch fire. That's the kind of thing we're going for here.
Right. I think it has to be some sort of romantic entanglement. I don't know what that means. I don't know what it means, but there has to be something with a coach's personal life or the way a coach carries himself. The weirdest thing that could happen. Coach decides to start coaching from home, but they win. This is different. This is weird. Work remotely?
Sort of the Dion approach.
Right. That if like Mike Leach had decided to work from Key West and it worked.
Right.
Like what is that thing that a coach could get involved with? Like, is a coach getting involved with like an MLM?
Oh my God.
We're like, what about that, Ty? What about that? Coach is selling some Cutco during the week?
Not a sponsor, could be.
Nah, probably not anymore. What is that weird scandal?
Man, MLMs.
Okay, how about this?
Those are the worst.
If a coach started dating a student of age, 18, 19, 20 years old?
It's sort of a Petrino thing, isn't it?
Was she? I think she had already graduated, though.
Okay.
She was just an employee.
Okay.
Former volleyball player. Maybe I'm mixing up timelines. Yeah, some sort of personal thing. We're like, man, this is weird. I don't know. What if like a coach and an AD started dating?
That would be interesting.
Yeah. Like a Phil Jackson. Didn't Phil Jackson date the owner of the Lakers?
Genie Bus, yeah.
Yeah. It would be like, so we've got a few questions.
They would probably need to report it to HR first. But...
Right. A chancellor and a coach dating and just out in the open.
Oh, man, that would be something.
That would be odd. And probably precedented. There's probably been a situation that we don't know about.
Okay, let's close it out with this one. Brecken. In the same way that the Oregon Duck does push-ups after every touchdown, if you tied some kind of fitness activity to every time blank happened in a game or during the season, what would get you in the best shape?
Oh, this is good. Okay, so we can approach this from a like general occurrence in a game or like a very specific team or player occurrence.
Right. Right.
Okay. I did think about this quite a bit, actually. You'll be surprised to learn. So I would say it would have to be something that you could do during commercial breaks quickly.
Yeah.
But often enough, right? You actually take advantage. Using judo, you take advantage of the weakness or whatever. You lean into it. I don't know how judo works. Okay, what's something that's repeatable during a game? So there's yardage accumulated. So the Duck is doing push-ups for every point scored. And it's not just 7 each time. It's 7 and then 14 and then 21, etc. So it accumulates. I would say maybe burpees, jump rope, something that gets your heart going a little bit. Holding a plank for a set number of seconds that aligns with something that happened during a game. Yeah. Or like you do at the end of each quarter, a total, you can start and stop or whatever. The total number of seconds of like a plank for your team's total yardage. Sorry, Iowa fans, you're not getting in shape.
Right.
Or like just penalties. Like how many penalties happen in a game? 11?
No.
On average? I don't know. Something like that. What if you were to do 5 burpees per penalty at the half and after the game? What would you tie it to?
Yeah.
Because you want to be able, I kind of think you should do it during the game, right? You get your heart pumping a little bit.
Right. Yeah,
now, I mean, people also drink during games. Maybe that's not super advisable.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you could play it every first down.
What do? Jumping jacks?
You could do jumping jacks. You could do the burpees after every first down would be another
But I don't
to
think
play
you
it.
want to get up from your couch while the game's happening.
Probably not. If you are a disgusted fan, you could do it. If you're an Iowa fan, if you're looking for a game to play every time your team gets a 3 and out, you could do something that hurts yourself a little bit.
Yeah. Well, at least it's what you're doing is you're doing a positive thing,
right?
To counteract something negative happening in the game.
Yeah. I mean, the most repeatable things in a game are obviously things like first downs, or obviously things like anytime a point is scored. That's why the Oregon Duck does the push-ups for that.
Right.
So it depends on how frequently we're talking about here and how in shape you're looking to get.
I feel like a burpee is the quickest way.
Yeah. I don't hate the burpee idea.
It's like strength. You don't know what a burpee is?
No, I don't hate the idea. Yeah, I know what a burpee is.
So it's, what could you tie it to? What could you tie a burpee to? You can't do like 130 burpees during a game. That's a lot.
That would be a lot.
But you could tie it to something that's repeatable. That's why I said penalties.
Yeah.
So in a game, it's 5 burpees for every penalty. And you do it at commercial breaks.
Or 5 burpees per sack.
Or you find a team. Like, there are some teams that are going to commit a ton of penalties this year.
Right.
So I think I looked this up. It's like somewhere the mean or the average, whatever, is about 80 on a season. So you got to assume a good chunk each game.
Okay.
So that's my answer. So it's about that's about a 6 penalty game. 6 and change penalties per game for each team.
So you're going penalties.
I would go 5 burpees per penalty.
Damn.
Could you do that?
I'm not sure I could.
I think that would get you in good shape, and that's something you can do right next to your couch.
This is true. Write in solidverbal@gmail.com. Let us know your thoughts on this and all of our questions. We have others that we did not get to. Perhaps we can address some of these when we do our Thursday bonus episode out on verballers.com. VERBALLERS.com. Ad-free bonus episodes every Thursday. Get access to the Discord and much, much more. Thank you to all who sent in their questions here. We have now turned the page into the month of May. We have much to discuss the deeper we get into this month. We have a whole load of concepts that are lined up and ready to go here. So we're excited about this month. We're excited about the months that are ahead. From this point forward, this sort of represents, I've said this time and again, what I would call the bottom of the offseason. Right after the NFL draft, everybody stops paying attention to college football for about a 2 to 3 week stretch. And then from that point forward, as we get a little bit later into May, that's when it starts to build. So it's going to start to roll downhill rather quickly the deeper we get into this month. We figured why not start off the month right by doing a good old Q&A episode. So again, solidverbal@gmail.com is the email. Hit us up across social media. Follow us across social media. We've been doing a lot out there as well. And of course, wherever it is that you are listening to / consuming this podcast, we'd appreciate it if you'd hit follow or subscribe. It really is the engine that makes the whole thing tick, Dan. So if you don't mind, I know you've done it already, but for anybody out there who's just finding us, has hung with us throughout this Q&A episode, hitting that follow or subscribe button really does help us a great deal.
What if a coach was writing under a pseudonym very professionally erotic literature? Like if a coach, name a coach who this would seem like so far afield, like this does not seem like this person at all, that if Jonathan Smith is writing erotic literature,
Chris Kleiman under the pseudonym Daniel Steele would be a zag.
Virginia Johnson.
Yeah.
Right? Chris Kleiman's writing, and it's not inappropriate. It's not like, it's not counter to morals that people would hold traditionally. It's just what humans do when they're in love, right? This is just Chris Kleiman writing these things under a pseudonym, and it is found out, right? There's some way, somehow, it is found out. And you're just like, well, Chris Kleiman writes a lot of erotic literature and has been since 2002. And here is this absolute wall of novels. I don't know how you ignore it, but you can't get rid of them. Can't get rid of them. It's really well written.
Yeah.
He is just a wizard with adjectives.
And it's one of those deals where he doesn't openly admit to it. He never does.
Yeah.
But internet sleuths out there are wise enough to put 2 and 2 together and figure out that he
like
also
when
has
Ashley Feinberg found James Comey's Twitter handle.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
It's pieced together gradually by internet sleuthing, and he forgets to switch on a VPN or something, gives away his location, and that's the case breaker. That's
right.
How we figure
there's
out
some sort of slip that a super fan of this series also is a Kansas State super fan and recognizes that Chris Kleiman in his press conference is using some unusual word in the same way that Virginia Johnson in her books is using this unusual word more often than most do.
Right.
And then they start looking at further evidence.
Right.
I think it's a pretty good answer, if I do say so myself.
solidverbal@gmail.com. If you'd like to participate in this weird sordid tale here we've got going on this podcast, thank you to one and all for downloading, for listening, for supporting what we do. Verballers.com, again, is the Patreon.
Mm-hmm.
For that guy over there, my good friend Dan Rubenstein, for myself, Ty Hildenbrandt, we will catch you all next week. In the meantime, enjoy your weekend and stay solid.
Peace.